Welcome to this new premium episode from English Plus Podcast. And this episode is all about vocabulary and speaking. Of course, the focus is on learning new words, but we will be focusing on how we can use these words to express ourselves better. Now, mainly in speaking, but of course, you can use the vocabulary you're going to learn in this premium series for writing as well. This is your host, Danny, and this is English Plus Premium. Now, for our very first topic for this series, I have chosen talking about feelings because, of course, that is a very important thing that we do every day. When we want to talk to people, of course, besides the small talk that I don't really like, to be honest, but we have to do it from time to time. When you start really talking to people that you know, friends of yours, people who are close to you, you will want to talk about your feelings. And that is a very important thing. And, it's not just going to be like talking about, I like this thing, I don't like this thing, I dislike, I love, I hate. Well, these are good words, of course, but they become too repetitive and they don't exactly express what you have in mind. You will want to say something else. You will want to say something that has a specific meaning, but you might not know all the words that you can use to express your feelings. So this is what I'm going to help you with in this episode and in episodes to come. Because of course, talking about feelings is not something that we can cover in one episode. So we're going to talk about it in 3 episodes. Today, we're going to talk about how we can describe pleasant and unpleasant feelings. But before we start, let me tell you that you can practice everything we are learning in a custom post I created on my website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. Now, if you're listening to this episode on Patreon, you will find the link in the body of the post. And if you're listening to it on the website, you're already there. And you can find the link in the description of the episode. Now, of course, I will have to remind you, this post is patron-only post. So when you go to the post, you might see that it is locked. But since you are patrons, all you have to do is sign in using your Patreon credentials, and you will have access to everything on the website. Now, without further ado, let's start talking about our very first topic, and that is how to talk about pleasant and unpleasant feelings. That's coming next. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. So let's start with talking about happiness and unhappiness. Now, of course, you can say I'm happy when you're feeling happiness, and you can simply say I'm sad or I'm unhappy when you're not happy. But we all know these words, and it's not a problem using these words for you or for anybody else, but we want more. We want more words to be able to express ourselves better. So let me introduce you to some of these words that we can use to describe happiness and unhappiness. Now, you may feel content or contented, and that is C-O-N-T-E-N-T, and of course you can add the ed to it. But when do we use this word? You use it. You say that you feel content or contented when you are satisfied with what you have. Now pay attention, content is not used before a noun. So we cannot say, for example, she is a content woman. We can say this woman is content, that's fine, but we don't use it before the noun. Just be careful not to use it before the noun. So again, you can say that she is content or contented, but if you want to use it before the noun, you will have to add this ed. So you can only say a contented person, not a content person. Now, for example, we can say he's very content with his life. He's always been a contented person. And remember, this is, of course, to describe happiness, but we say it when you feel that you are satisfied with what you have. So maybe it's not enough just to say that I'm happy. I want to tell you more. It's not just I'm happy. Happy is a general word, it's a general adjective that has a lot of meanings. But if you want to get specific, you will want to use this content or contented. And of course, that's just one word we're going to learn today. There's another one. You can use grateful. G-R-A-T-E-F-U-L, grateful. You feel grateful when someone has done something thoughtful for you. And by the way, I noticed that some people use it in a wrong way when something bad that could have happened did not happen, and they say, I'm grateful. No, you can't be grateful because something bad that could have happened didn't happen. In that situation, you use thankful. I'm thankful that this disaster didn't happen, or I could have averted this disaster, but not grateful. You're grateful for good things, especially when someone has done something thoughtful for you. For example, I'm really grateful to you for helping me with my project. And here I want you to take note of how we are using it, especially when we talk about prepositions. So earlier when I said he's very content with his life, we use with content. So take that as a note, because prepositions can be really difficult in English, because sometimes they don't really make sense, especially if English is not your first language. And here, I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to somebody for helping me, for something they did. I'm grateful to you for helping me with my project. All right? So we have content, we have grateful, but that's not everything. We also have delighted. D-E-L-I-G-H-T-E-D, delighted. You feel delighted when something has happened that gives you great pleasure. When you hear news of someone's good fortune, for instance. For example, I was delighted to hear you're getting married. So that's good news. You hear that your best friend, or maybe one of your friends or family, is getting married and you feel delighted. Delighted, that means that something has happened that gives you great pleasure. You hear great news about someone you know, so you feel delighted. All right? And remember again, I was delighted to hear. I was delighted to see. I was delighted to know. So that's how we use it in a sentence. All right, so we talked about a few words to describe happiness. Now, what about unhappiness? Because of course, unhappiness is part of life. And we need to have ways to describe this as well. It's not just we're always happy. Of course, I hope you're always happy. But we both know that this is not the case. Sometimes we feel unhappy. So apart from just saying I'm unhappy or I'm sad, what other words can I use to talk about slightly different meanings but very powerful? Because remember, you find yourself sometimes using the same word over and over, and when you want to change it, you use very with it. So you say, I'm happy, I'm very happy, I'm sad, I'm very sad. Well, this is okay. This is not a big problem, of course, but this is kind of weak, especially if you have something else in mind. What about having the right meaning and you express exactly what you have in mind? That's what we're going to achieve together in vocabulary and speaking. So let's move on and talk about unhappiness, or how to express our unhappiness. Let's start with miserable. M-I-S-E-R-A-B-L-E. Miserable. Now you feel miserable when everything seems wrong in your life. Now, of course, we have to be positive and all, but sometimes you feel this way. I feel this way sometimes. Everybody feels this way sometimes. So which word can you use to describe this feeling specifically when nothing is going right? When everything seems to go wrong in your life, you can use this word miserable. For example, I felt miserable all day yesterday. Maybe it was just the gray, cold weather that caused me to feel miserable, but I felt miserable. It is okay to feel miserable sometimes, and it is okay to talk about it, especially to people you trust and people you love. You will want to talk about your feelings to those people who are close to you. And that was a word that we used to talk about unhappiness, but that's not the last one. Now, we talked about content. To talk about happiness, well, there's the opposite, discontented. But by the way, here we don't have discontent. It has to be with ed. So discontented. You feel discontented when your life is not giving you satisfaction. Remember, we talked about content when you feel satisfied about your life. But here it's just the opposite. You feel discontented when your life is not giving you satisfaction. For example, she's very discontented. Remember, what was the preposition that we used with content? It was with. Right? These are very important bits and pieces that you learn, not only the words, but also the words that we use with these words. And later on, we will talk about collocations as well. In our series, Vocabulary and Speaking, it's not just about learning words on their own. Of course, we're going to learn idioms, expressions, phrasal verbs, and collocations, words that come together. But here, let's stick to what we're talking about today. And she's very discontented with her job and is going to look for a new one. Well, I'm sure that you felt this way at one point in your life. I mean, some of us or a few of us might have landed their dream job right off the bat, but it is not the case for everybody. Now, even for those of you who are living the dream and you have a dream job, or maybe you have your own business or something, maybe you had to go through a couple of bad jobs until you got to where you are right now, and now you are contented. So back then, remember back then when you used to work for that person or for that company and you were not happy, you were not satisfied. Just like this example here, she's very discontented with her job and is going to look for a new one. So we have miserable, discontented to talk about unhappiness, but that's not all. There's also fed up or sick and tired. These are expressions, of course. Now, fed up is simply F-E-D and up. Sick and tired is very easy to spell, I guess. But when do we use this? You feel fed up or sick and tired when you've had enough of something disagreeable. Now, you had to put up with some bad situation for a while, but after some time, you get fed up, you get sick and tired, you can take it no longer, no more. And that's when you don't say, I'm unhappy. What do you mean I'm unhappy? I'm sick and tired. I'm fed up. I can't take it anymore. That's what you want to use. For example, I'm fed up with Olivia's rudeness. I had to put up with her rudeness long enough, but not anymore. I'm fed up with, remember, with Olivia's rudeness. Or we can say, for example, I'm sick and tired of her behavior. I can't take it anymore. And by the way, for sick and tired, you can use sick alone. You can say, I'm sick of her bad behavior. You don't have to say, I'm sick and tired all the time. Sick alone serves the meaning well. So here, I'm fed up with Olivia's rudeness, and if there's anyone who's listening to me and your name is Olivia, I'm really sorry, but I pick names just randomly. So don't worry, I will use my name in some really bad example. So it's nothing personal, Olivia. But anyway, let's go back to what we're talking about. I'm fed up with Olivia's rudeness and sick and tired of her bad behavior. Or, as I said, sick of only, without and tired. And now, of course, when you're sad, you can simply say you're sad. But when it is a little bit more than that and it's been going on for a long time, you've been miserable for a long time, it can be a little bit more than miserable itself. It can be depressed. When you feel depressed, you are miserable over a long period of time. And of course, we use this word sometimes to say, I feel depressed, but depression can be an illness. If it goes for a long time, you might even want to see a doctor or a psychiatrist for that. So depression is considered an illness in some severe cases. And in these cases, people need to seek help. Now, I hope, of course, it doesn't ever get that bad with any one of you, but it does sometimes. But when you say I'm depressed, it doesn't have to mean clinically depressed. It can be just because I've been miserable for a long time, so I feel depressed. For example, I felt depressed after having 10 job interviews and not getting a job. So you see, it's not like clinical depression here, but this person has had 10 job interviews and didn't get even one, not even an offer or anything. So this person felt depressed. And for our last word for happiness and unhappiness, that is confused. Now, when you feel confused, you cannot make sense of different conflicting feelings or ideas. You feel confused. Well, that is, of course, going towards feeling unhappy, because when we don't know what's happening around us and when we feel confused, we can't make sense of these different conflicting feelings and ideas, it's not a really good feeling, right? Now, for example, I feel so confused. Last week, she said she loved me passionately. This week, she said we were just good friends. Now, I'm pretty sure all the guys who are listening to me and the girls, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure it happened to you at some point in your life when you met this person and you loved him or her, and it was great at the beginning, or maybe at some point it was great, but then this person just kind of changed and said, no, I don't really love you. We're just good friends, that's all. But you just said yesterday that you loved me, so what happened? What changed? I'm confused. C-O-N-F-U-S-E-D, confused. So that is another word that you can add to your active vocabulary bank, the words that you can use in your speaking and of course in your writing as well. And that's everything about our very first point for today, and that is talking about happiness and unhappiness. I'll be right back to talk about excitement, upset, anger, and anxiety. So don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. So of course, happiness and unhappiness are not the only two feelings that we have. Of course, we have feelings of excitement, of being upset, angry, and anxiety, of course. So here, we'll talk about these as well. Now, I will give you some examples and we will discuss these examples and see what they mean. We'll start with the word inspired, I-N-S-P-I-R-E-D, inspired. For example, I felt inspired after the concert. I've decided to take piano lessons. So what does that mean when you feel inspired? Now think about it. Before I tell you, always try to pick the meaning or to guess the meaning from the context. You see, I felt inspired after the concert. And obviously this is something positive. So after the concert, something good happened to me. I felt inspired and I've decided to take piano lessons. So what do you think that means? Well, it means I was stimulated to do something positive or creative. Now, sometimes you have a lot to say, but you're kind of not confident enough to say it, or you're just too busy with daily life and stuff, and that's not a problem. Of course, we all have that. But sometimes you see something, you see a video, you see someone, and you feel inspired. You feel stimulated to do something positive or creative, maybe to write, or to paint, or to make music, or something like that, of course. Or like in this example here, to take piano lessons. You don't have to be a concert pianist, but maybe that's something you've always wanted to do, and you saw someone doing it, you liked it very much, and it inspired you. So that is one word that talks about excitement. What about upset? Let me give you this example. The argument I had with Eva the other night really upset me. Of course, when something upsets you, it makes you feel unhappy. And you might all know the meaning of upset, of course, but I'm just throwing it as another word that you can use to talk about make me unhappy. Instead of saying really made me unhappy, you can simply say really upset me. And here I'm using it as a verb, not as an adjective. Of course, we can use it as an adjective. I was upset. But here we can use it as a verb. So sometimes it's not always about learning new words, but learning new ways to use the words we already know. That's also very important, and that will help your active vocabulary bank a lot. So that is another word. What about enthusiastic and frustrated? Well, let me spell these words because these are kind of difficult. Enthusiastic, it's E-N-T-H-U-S-I-A-S-T-I-C, and frustrated, F-R-U-S-T-R-A-T-E-D, frustrated. So let me give you this example. I was quite enthusiastic about my tennis lessons at first, but the teacher isn't very good and now I just feel frustrated. So I was enthusiastic at first, but then I felt frustrated. So obviously it's kind of an opposite, right? When you feel enthusiastic, you have very positive feelings about something. You really want to do it. You can't wait until this thing happens because you like it very much, right? You have all these very positive feelings about this thing. And that is exactly what happened to our friend here, that she was quite enthusiastic about her tennis lessons at first. But the teacher wasn't very good and now she feels frustrated. What does that mean? When you are frustrated, you feel unable to do something you really want to do. I mean, if you think about it, we all have things we can't do, but sometimes we don't care. I mean, I can't fly a plane, but I don't really care about that. I can't dive, but that's okay. I'm not crazy about diving. So when you can't do something and you don't care about it, that's not a problem. But when you really want to do something, but you can't do it because someone is not letting you, because the circumstances are not right, because you don't have enough money to do it, etc., whatever the reason is, you love this thing. You really want to do it, but you can't because of some of those reasons I just told you, or some other reason, doesn't matter. Then you feel frustrated because this is something that you really want to do, but you can't. And that's exactly what happened to our friend here. She really wanted to learn tennis. She was really enthusiastic about it at first, but then the teacher was bad and she didn't learn anything, she didn't get any better, etc. And now she feels frustrated. So these are two very important words that you can use all the time to feel enthusiastic and frustrated. And now what about the next word? Thrilled. T-H-R-I-L-L-E-D, thrilled. Let me give you this example. She was so thrilled when she got a job with a TV company. She's always wanted to work in the media. Now, when you are thrilled, you are extremely happy. This is how you feel when something extremely exciting and pleasing happens. And happy is not enough. excited is not enough. I'm thrilled. So she was so thrilled. She felt extreme excitement and pleasure because of what happened. So that is what you feel when something extremely exciting and pleasing happens to you. And what about nervous and anxious? Now we're trying to talk about the positive and the negative, of course. Let me give you this example. I was so nervous before the exam, and then I felt anxious before the results came out, but I passed with a high grade. So nervous and anxious, they're very close, by the way. But nervous is a little bit different. Well, feeling nervous is a bit like feeling excited, but it is a negative feeling. So sometimes it's okay to feel nervous, and it's not a big deal. It's exactly like excitement, but with excitement, you have this big smile on your face, and when you're nervous, you just don't. But kind of, it's the same thing. It's a big thing you're doing, and it's really important for you to do it right, so you feel nervous. Now, anxious is close, very close to nervous, but it's a little bit different. That is when you are afraid and uncertain. And remember, we said that this person felt anxious before the results came out. Not nervous, anxious, because you're afraid, you're uncertain, you don't know what's gonna happen, you don't know if you're gonna pass or not, so you're anxious. All right? So here we have nervous and anxious. They're very close, but there is this slightly different meaning that you can use nervous for something and anxious for something slightly different. And finally, let's talk about furious. I was furious with the waiter. The service was slow and he spilled coffee over my shirt. I was furious, F-U-R-I-O-U-S, furious with. Remember the preposition, right? I was furious with the waiter. Now, that's simply saying extremely angry. Now, of course, I can say I was angry, but angry is not enough. I was extremely angry. I was furious with the waiter. The service was slow and he spilled coffee over my shirt. And one last thing before we finish today's episode, I'm gonna tell you about the words really, absolutely, and quite. Because we can use them with these adjectives we learned in today's episode. Now, really can be used with all the adjectives we talked about. No problem at all. You can say really content, really grateful, really confused, really depressed, but absolutely cannot be used with all of them. It goes only with the words describing extreme states. For example, like delighted, fed up, sick and tired, thrilled, furious. You can say absolutely furious, absolutely thrilled. And here we don't use very. We can't say very furious, because what is actually the meaning of furious? Very angry. So imagine you're saying very, very angry. Well, of course, in speaking it's possible, but what I'm saying is because the meaning already has very built in, so we don't use very here, we use absolutely. Or, of course, as I said earlier, you can use really. And what about quite? Because you hear that all the time. You can say quite content, quite grateful, quite delighted, etc. So what is the meaning of quite? Is it the same like absolutely? Well, when you use it with those extreme words we talked about, the words that you use absolutely with, the meaning is just like absolutely. But when you use it with less extreme words, quite simply means rather. I mean like a little, but not absolutely. All right? So for example, when you say I was quite happy, now, quite happy, that's not extremely happy. No, I was quite happy, rather happy, a little happy. But when you say absolutely, like with delighted, for example, absolutely delighted, I was quite delighted, I was absolutely delighted. So remember, these adverbs are very important because you will need some time to say more than just the word that you have. You want to say absolutely, really, quite, or rather, or very, of course, in some cases. With that, we come to the end of our very first premium episode in our premium series, Vocabulary and Speaking. I hope you enjoyed, and remember, it's not enough just to listen to the episode. Of course, if you listen to the episode, you will learn a lot, I guarantee you that. But if you want to take it a step further, you can go to the website, and since you're already patrons, you can simply log in using your Patreon credentials, and you can access all the practice I left you on this custom post I created for this episode. With that being said, I would like to thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. This is your host, Danny. I will see you next time.